The story's called Trapped. A dense fog swept across the quiet sleeping town as Michael ran through the streets with an eye over his shoulder. He tried countless doors, hoping there was one unlocked. It was either that or keep running, and he'd been running far too long. He stared into the streets with a wild expression, and his ears perked. Then out of the shadows, figures emerged. They pushed through the sea of dense fog, lit by the sickening yellow streetlights above. Slowly, they began to take shape, and their gaunt faces were a constant reminder of the inescapable. The manner in which they moved was irregular, disturbing silhouettes painted against the night, always pushing forward, always in pursuit. Michael's blood ran cold in his veins. He tried the next house, then the next, until finally found an unlocked door, and he quickly flew inside. "Who the hell are you?" a voice demanded. Michael turned to find an old woman in her nightgown, holding a cat in her arms. She seemed more curious than upset. Her husband watched on from the top of the stairs, inquisitive but afraid. "Please, you have to hide." Michael was hysterical, and without hesitation, he began stacking objects in front of the door at a frantic pace, and the old woman began shouting for him to stop. Her next demand would have been to send him on his way, but the shrieks and wails started at the door. Shadows of multiple bodies darkened the decorative glass, and the screams became deafening. "What is that?" cried the old woman. Michael was hysterical, unable to calm himself down. The old woman thought he was insane, until the shadows broke through the back door, and she could see their faces plain as day. Undead corpses shambled in, pressing ever closer. When she realized the gravity of the situation, she grabbed her chest, a look of anguish painted on her face, staggering back with an eye aimed at the stairs. Her husband cowered behind the banister, unaware and too afraid to move, as Michael grabbed the woman and pulled her down into the basement. The door shut and locked just as grotesque hands reached for the opening. They stood there for a moment, watching the doorknob rattle with a feeling of unease drowning them. The door heaved under the weight of countless bodies gathering on the other side, but all they could do was descend. From upstairs, a scream cut through the groans of the dead. It was the old woman's husband. It lasted several moments until eventually it went silent. The old woman sobbed deeply, still clinging to the cat. Michael urged her down the creaking steps, knowing full well those things were not far behind. Upon inspecting the basement for a way out, he made note of the cellar, 2 small windows, and piles of various items kept over the years. Sadly, there was nothing helpful, and they certainly couldn't fit through the windows. They were trapped, and there was no way out. That fact was beginning to sink in. "It's your fault," the woman muttered in between breaths. "This is all your fault." Her voice trailed off. With a great sense of calm, the old woman walked over to a desk in the corner and unlocked a drawer. The sound of metal clicking and shifting into place rang out in the darkness. "Please," Michael cried, but the old woman continued, pointing the gun at him while fighting back tears. Michael had accepted the consequences of his actions and waited for it all to be over. It wasn't a gunshot that he heard next, but instead the sound of splintering wood echoing in the small home. Dozens of undead bodies tumbled down the stairs in front of them. The corpses lay dazed for a moment, then as if a switch were flipped, they turned their attention back to the pair. Their skin was pale, covered in dark veins and pooling fluids. Some even had limbs missing, but they were all decomposing, and despite it all, they were still alive, reaching out for them. The old woman was stunned, hands shaking, unable to believe what she was seeing. Then she screamed. Michael did not hesitate to tear away the weapon, as well as the cat, and reluctantly pushed the old woman into the waiting arms of the dead. The louder she screamed, the more she drew them in. They were focused solely on her. Michael's vision filled with tears as he leapt into the cellar and shut the door behind him. Gradually the cries faded, replaced instead by the sound of chewing. Michael wept silently, clutching the gun tightly to his chest as the dead had their fill and the doorknob began to move. I hope you enjoyed that one today, and if you liked it, please drop a comment down below. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for your continued support and your interest. Feel free to give me suggestions or any ideas you have. I'd be happy to write any stories based on those ideas, and I will gladly give you credit at the end. I just want to grow this community, create some great content, and I hope we can see something really interesting happen here. Thank you so much for listening. Hope you all have a great day. Cheers.